Well, welcome everybody. Happy Monday afternoon to you. And we are just delighted that you've joined in. We've got a lot of folks on the call today. We're going to be discussing identity theft, scams, and fraud. And we have a very special guest with us. Of course, for those of us joining the call that are clients, you guys know us here at Atlantic Wealth Management. I'm Greg, joined with J.A. and Tara, and we're excited to be a part of your Monday afternoon. Today, from Raleigh is joining us is Mercedes Restucha-Klem. She serves as an Assistant Attorney General with the Public Protection Section of the North Carolina Department of Justice. In this role, she does outreach to vulnerable populations and works on various policy initiatives, including consumer protection and criminal justice reform. Mercedes is the Attorney General's representative on the Governor's Advisory Council on Hispanic and Latino Affairs. Prior to joining the Public Protection Section, Mercedes represented the North Carolina Division of Child Development and Early Education in administrative hearings related to child care providers. Before joining the NCDOJ, Mercedes worked for disability rights in North Carolina, advocating for civil rights of people with disabilities, with a focus in employment, architectural accessibility, and voting rights. She has also practiced criminal and immigration law. Mercedes has a Bachelor of Arts degree in journalism and mass communications, public relations sequence, with a second major in political science from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and a Juris Doctorate degree with honors from North Carolina Central University School of Law. Prior to attending law school, Mercedes worked as an aide to U.S. Congressman Bob Etheridge in North Carolina's 2nd District. She is a Raleigh native, where she lives with her husband, daughter, and pug. We're excited to have her on. And Mercedes, I'm going to turn today's program over to you, and we look forward to what you have to share with our clients.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so excited to virtually be here with you all. We're going to talk about how to avoid scams and fraud today, and I'm happy to take questions as they come in, and have deputized Greg and J.A. to make sure to interrupt if they come in and let me know, and we can make this more of a conversation if you'd like. So
yeah, one quick thing too, just a matter of housekeeping. In the past, we have had a little bit of issues with our internet provider Spectrum. So if for some reason the webinar goes down, just stay put and we will join back up with you as soon as we can. So just don't sign off. That tends to work better, and we'll reconnect if we do go out.
Awesome. So I currently the elected Attorney General is Josh Stein, and what some folks might not know about Attorney General Stein is before serving as a state senator for several years, he was the Senior Deputy Attorney General of our North Carolina Department of Justice Consumer Protection Section. And so through that work, he saw just how vulnerable North Carolinians can be to bad business actors and scammers and fraudsters. And so when he entered into office as an Attorney General about 6 years ago now, he renamed our section to the Public Protection Section, and has named consumer protection and financial literacy as a major public safety concern that our department focuses on. You'll see here that the North Carolina mission, the mission of the Department of Justice is to protect the people of North Carolina. We do that in 3 ways. A large part of our work is preventing crime and supporting law enforcement, and it's also defending the state, its people, and their constitutional rights through, taking legal actions or representing different state agencies. But the second part of our mission there is to safeguard consumers, and we do that in a variety of ways. We operate what's called the Consumer Protection Division, which it directly takes consumer complaints from individuals. You'll see at the end of my presentation, there'll be a phone number on where you can submit a complaint against a bad business actor or an individual that may have scammed or frauded you. If certain criteria is met, that department, that section will take legal action against scammers and bad actors. Also, that section is the recipient of data breach reports. And so there are a lot of companies in our state and our country that have personal identifying information of ours, our credit card information, our addresses, our medical account numbers. And if that information is breached, they are required to report that to the Department of Justice so that we will all be notified and that people that were impacted are notified. We'll see some numbers on data breaches and why that's important to us in a couple of slides. And then last thing that we do as a way to safeguard consumers is we go around and we educate North Carolinians about scams and fraud, because frankly, the prevention is the #1 cure, right? And once money is out of the pockets, it's very hard to be made whole again. The point of a civil action is when you get damages in legal action is to make somebody whole again. And it's to get the money back, right? And often when we're dealing with scams or bad actors, a legal action is not going to, one, either result in the money getting back because the cost benefit analysis does not make it worth bringing an actual lawsuit, or two, the emotional harm is such that the individual will not be made whole again. No amount of money is going to fix the damage and trust that has happened. And so we're here to educate to prevent the damage before it happens. Some numbers, as mentioned, people can call and complain about consumer issues to our office. Some statistics from 2021, the largest number of complaints that we get have to do with telemarketing and robocalls. We'll talk about that in detail in a second, but that number there is over 10,000 complaints in 2021 related to robocalls. After that is a far second, is about slightly less than 2,000 complaints related to utilities, slightly more than 1,500 complaints related to credit, and then hovering at about 1,300 complaints we have related to motor vehicles and price gouging. We had over 1,000 complaints related to elder fraud, and then slightly over 1,000 related to landlord and tenant, and then less than 1,000 with respect to home improvement, insurance, and professional services. Those are the types of things people are calling to complain about, not having proper work conducted. With respect to robocall, in February of 2020, so I will say it kind of got lost in the news a little bit, is that we created what was called the Robocall task force, Robocall report task force. And we are asking North Carolinians to share information about the spam calls that they get. We know it can be kind of cumbersome, but what happens when people share these numbers with us is that we are partnering with federal law enforcement partners and with the federal, with the telecommunication companies in order to try to see if we can spot national trends and scams. Our department is conducting its own investigation to see if there's any statewide trend. And then the telecommunication industry is working with local law enforcement to see if they can, when trends are spotted, to take action when possible. What's popped up more frequently now are what I like to say is when I first started giving this presentation about 3 years ago, I would get out of the presentation and my phone would be full of missed calls and it was all spam. Now it says spam call. And so I know that it is a spam call. And that is actually was a change that happened as a result of some advocacy at the federal level where regulatory changes were made because previously our telecommunication companies were not permitted to kind of mark and filter out calls. We'd love it, right, if the telecommunication companies could just stop the robocalls. But would we love that? Because that would give them the control to stop the phone calls that we're getting. And we are, in the United States, so we want to be able to freely communicate. So that type of regulation on marking calls as who's what can get a little bit detailed, right? And so that has changed. And I like to say the number of spam calls that I've gotten, I know that they're spam now, so I don't have to answer them. To the point now about unwanted text messages. Now I'm getting a ton more of unwanted text messages. What you can do is you can actually forward those text messages to the number *7726, which on a number pad spells out spam. *7726. Every phone is a little bit different on how to forward a call. What will happen when you forward that text message to *7726 is that your telecom provider will text you back and say, please email or please copy and paste the email or the phone number that this message came from. So you'll do that as well, copy and paste it into the message, and then your telecom provider will say, thank you, we'll initiate an investigation. You're doing your part to fight cybersecurity, right? And that's great. And so we know that if anything can be done, hopefully folks are doing it. I was chatting with Greg and Jay before and made the comment that technology is always going to be ahead of government regulation. That's just the reality of the way that technology develops. And so we need to educate ourselves and just be aware that as much protections as can be provided, bad actors are usually going to be a step ahead in that realm. I wanted to talk a little bit about price gouging, because in the last couple of years, we have found ourselves in quite the state of emergency frequently. And so when there is a state of emergency, which is declared by the governor, as was in March 2020 as a result of the coronavirus, and then also last summer when Colonial Pipeline issues happened with the gas shortage, there's also a state of emergency then. What happens when a state of emergency is declared is that it becomes illegal to charge too much or unreasonably increase the price of goods and services during that time. The question I always get is, what is an unreasonable increase in price in services and goods and services? And that's why we have teams of attorneys here to kind of get into the detail, because obviously supply and demand issues do go into that analysis. So I say all this because we had more than 2,300 price gouging complaints at the beginning of the pandemic. One of those complaints was actually a company called the Stephen Gould Corporation that had pitched the sale of 7 million N95 masks to our North Carolina Emergency Management Unit, which is operated by the Department of Public Safety. We were also contacted by UNC Healthcare, Duke Healthcare, and the Charlotte chapter of the American Red Cross, that they were also being pitched these N95 masks at a markup of more than 100%. That if the sales had gone through, it would have resulted in more than $30 million per transaction. I think there was about 6 transactions there that were being considered. And so our office got a wind of what was going on there, and the company was permanently banned from engaging in practices in North Carolina moving forward. And so those are the types of things that can happen if we see things happening in a large scale.
Mercedes, when would someone know that they were a victim of price gouging, or when should they file a complaint?
If the line that we like to say there is if you see something, say something, and then you might not know. You might not be contacted back because we might not be able to investigate it, but it's often hard to know. And so it's similar to kind of that, what we used to say back in the bomb, a box in the middle of a square, right? If you see something a little bit wary, just report it and they'll go from there. And I think that, to the section's point, if they need more information and they do start investigating it and taking action, the person will be followed up with to get more information.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment, there is no relation.
Did
you say?
Thank you. No. Well, I appreciate that.
Relation.
No,
Yes.
I didn't even make the association. Yeah,
Okay, good.
It's never good to have it's never nice to have a namesake out there that's running the family name through the mud.
Yeah.
So speaking of security breaches or data breaches, ransomware, our office is the recipient of when a security breach or a data breach takes place, that company or business has to report it to the Department of Justice. So a data breach or a security breach is when a company, and I say company, but it could be just an individual sole proprietor, a person that's operating as a business. Any business or corporation, profit or nonprofit, if they are holding your personal identifying information, your name, your and any type of number associated with you, and that information gets disclosed, they are responsible for reporting that, not only to you, but to the Department of Justice, so that we can notify you and so that you are given notice and afforded all of the resources available to you to protect yourself from identity theft. Some folks often ask, like, what happened in 2017? There's a huge spike in 2017. And If we were in person, I'd ask, but since we're not, I'll say that was when Experian, ironically enough, consumer reporting agency that tracks all of our financial stuff, breached our information. So more than 18 million North Carolinians been affected as a result of security breaches since this reporting requirement has gone into place, but the large bulk of that was in 2017 as a result of Experian. There's a settlement that resulted in us being able to get free credit reports, and if we're directly impacted, also different types of softwares. That settlement period is done now. To say that we are still all are eligible for free annual credit reports, and we suggest that folks get them every 3-4 months, because there are 3 companies, right? So you can get one from Experian in April, TransUnion in July, and then Equifax in December. That'll give you a snapshot of what your credit is looking like throughout the entire year, as opposed to getting them all in January. You just get that 1 month snapshot.
Yeah. The important thing there is clients can go to annualcreditreport.com.
Yes.
And get the free report. I know there's been a lot of advertising around freecreditreport.com. Don't go there.
Yeah.
Go to annualcreditreport.com and you can pick up your free credit report.
Yes. Yeah. And I say at the end of the presentation, our website has a lot of information on how to, getting the credit report, putting a freeze on your credit, which we'll talk about in a second. Some really quick numbers about ransomware breaches, which is when what it sounds like is somebody will hack into your computer system and they will hold your data hostage, ransom, until you pay a ransom, and they'll give you access to your information back. Most, I think, prevalent one that happened was the one I mentioned just now this past summer, was the Colonial Pipeline. That company was hacked into, and their software basically shut down the way that the software was operating, the gas infrastructure system. Their data was held at ransom for millions and millions of dollars. They worked with the FBI to pay that and get things reopened. It can happen to Colonial Pipeline. It can also happen to, like, a dear friend of mine whose fiance passed away, and somebody hacked into her Facebook and said, if you pay us $600, we'll give you back your account. Well, she had pictures of all the pictures, all of the memories of her and her former partner were on there. That's kind of gut-wrenching things, right? And so these people can be a victim of what we call ransomware. Some tips for how to prevent ransomware attacks is making sure that you are always kind of up to speed on your antivirus software and you know how to use your virus software. A lot of the times, the ad that pops up that says, I'm a virus, run a scan, and you click on that to run the scan, that is the virus that you're running. So making sure that you're intimately aware of how the software on your computer works. Always backing up your data regularly will prevent you from wanting to pay the ransom to get access back to your data. And also making sure you're conducting kind of what we call a risk analysis, if you are an audit of your systems, that everywhere that you're connecting to the internet or to different sites where you have a password, that it is legitimate sites, and that you have your settings set as secure as possible. Going to talk real quick about some prevention tips, and please feel free to jump in if any questions pop up. But I think the first thing here is to familiarize yourself with common scams. And there is a way to sign up for scam alerts email at the end of the presentation. So we notify people as soon as we hear about the latest scam. But knowing scams will always present themselves as what we call the imposter scam, which is somebody that's like pretending to be the FBI or the Social Security Administration, or usually some sort of government or government agency, that something's been breached and you need to do this because there's a warrant out for your arrest, or that an imposter scam is somebody pretending to be a business. When I represented the Division of Child Development, we were contacted by a child care provider who had received a letter on the division letterhead saying they owed a fine of $600 of something. It looked very legitimate. It looked like it was from the state. It was not. It was what we call a phishing attempt, somebody trying to get you to respond. A romance scam is when I like to joke, you know, some people believe all romance is a scam, but romance scams are often when people will string along folks for usually just online. They never meet in person. It's hard to know if they are even who they say they are. They're often misrepresenting who they even are. They can be a woman pretending to be a man pretending to be a woman, a man pretending to be a child, right? Like these types of scams can present in different ways. Romance scams is often known as catfishing. There's a show that was popular a couple decades back about, it's called catfishing. Business scams look like investment scams. You know, the Bernie Madoff is the biggest scam out there, right? So knowing that when you're trusted investors, I think you guys are in very safe hands. But you know, it often people will say, you know, be pitched a business idea, knowing that you can check to make sure that things that you're investing are registered appropriately. So we'll talk a little bit too about holiday and seasonal mail scams that happens often around the you know, Christmas holidays, or things where we're giving a lot of gifts, where the phishing emails look a lot like the package deliveries. You know, your package is about to be delivered. Check here, click here for the shipment, or you just ordered this. I bring up gift cards because gift cards are a hallmark feature of a scam. If people are asking for payment in a gift card, do not do it. I would say find a different vendor. We say avoid racks when buying gift cards. And that's often because sometimes folks can access the information on the back, use it and put it back up there. You know, that is depending on where you're buying your cards. It's best if you can kind of get it behind the counter, is always safer if you are going to be purchasing gift cards. But always, if anybody is asking or requiring payment by gift card over the phone, that is the hallmark feature of a scam. Also, being aware of times of emergency, things like what's going on in the Ukraine right now, or when there's a natural disaster. Charity and investment scams pop up always. So knowing that you can go to the Secretary of State or the Better Business Bureau Wise Giving Alliance, those are going to be reputable charity investment organizations where you want to invest your money. Door-to-door scams are still very alive and well. It's the first things that we heard reported in March of 2020 were people selling miracle cures and home testing kits when we didn't even have the vaccine or a test for it yet. I like to make sure folks understand that if somebody is knocking door to door at your house and you feel fear for your physical safety, that's not the time to call the Department of Justice. You have to call your local law enforcement officer. But you can, if it's just somebody selling you something and you kind of got a bad vibe that it was a scam, you can call and report that to our office. Knowing that there are still people out there that are selling things door to door. I think one of the messages to take away from this presentation is that it's important to be a smart consumer. If somebody is trying to sell you something and they're making these pitches, that could be their job, right? And that's fair. That is how a lot of people make a living in our country. As a smart consumer, you have to do your own research. And so if somebody is soliciting to you, 9 times out of 10, that might not be the best deal for you. You have to do your research. And if that is a good deal for you, after you've done your research, you've consulted with family and friends, you've called people to make sure everything's safe, then maybe that could be an offer for you. But it's about you choosing what you're spending your money on, not letting people take your money from you. The grandparent scam is a big one. Most folks have heard about this before. It popped up with a vengeance during COVID because so many people were going through medical crisis. So it looks like somebody calling up and saying, your grandchild or your family member is sick, or they've been incarcerated because of something. I need you to wire me X amount of dollars in order to provide them legal counsel, in order to provide them continued health care. The scammers will act out of fear. Fear and urgency. You have to act now. In 2020, we had over 1,400 complaints with close to $5.5 million lost in the grandparent scam. Romance scams, I described those a little bit, is when somebody pretends to be somebody they're not and will string people along for weeks, months, years. I invite you all to listen to this YouTube video. It's on the FBI website. It's the victim of a romance scam tells her story. It's heart-wrenching. You can hear the trauma in this woman's voice. This is kind of goes back to the beginning. Even once the money is lost, you can't get it back. You can't fix the trauma that's happened. Even if you do get the money back, which did not happen in this case, you still can't fix trauma that happens at that time. So we had, in 2020, 54 complaints with a little over $3 million lost. These numbers are for North Carolina alone. This is an example of a phishing attempt. So a phishing attempt I'd mentioned when we were talking about Amazon delivery emails around the holidays. It looks like something that we might have gotten. This looks like a Zoom invitation, right? Y'all are here on a Zoom call. This was not a legitimate email. When I went and hovered my email and my cursor over the link, it pulls up a block, and that box is going to show you where that link is going to take you. And you see that that's a backwards alphabet. That does not say zoom.com. It's a bunch of jargon. It's a bunch of letters. That is the number one best way to protect yourself online, is before you click on something, you have to hover your cursor over it and see that the link pops up. And if it's a valid link that looks like it's legitimate, then going from there. Some telltale signs here. This email, no reply at ncdoj.gov, is not Scott Glasson's email. So that was like one thing that should have alerted me. The second thing was a pop-up from my email saying this is a problem with this message. A lot of times pop-ups pop up and we ignore them. Now, maybe we don't click on it because clicking on it might be a malware. But what we can do is read it and be aware and know how our computer works. Because again, we are the tool user and the computer is the tool. Then the last thing there is, again, hovering and making sure you know where you're clicking. Here's another example of a phishing attempt. This is a Facebook ad, again, and that email was actually an email that we all received at the Department of Justice. So we are also targets of phishing attempts. This Facebook scam here, something that popped up on my feed. I have mom to a toddler, right? And so I'm like, Lego, that's exciting, flash sale. Now, obviously that is too good to be true, which is Legos don't need to go on sale, clearly not 80% off. And so you see here, this could be very legitimate, but there's the copy and pasted logo. There's that sense of urgency. That's too good to be true. Legos don't go on sale. And then again, that fake URL and kind of nonsensical description that are the telltale signs. So understanding some of the factors of what lead people to be vulnerable to scams. And I think we can appreciate this all a little bit more. Yes, Jay.
Mercedes, just back on that phishing attempt. So to click on something like that on Facebook, like an ad like that, what is the end goal and what are the scammers getting at, or what are they getting?
So my mom clicked on something very similar to this. It was a live baby doll that looked like it was supposed to be rubber and it was going to be this big. She did get something in the mail. It was like a piece of rubber that my daughter absolutely loves, but it's hideous and it's not what was described. So what might happen here is somebody might get something in the mail, but they're fake. They're not real Legos. They're just a very cheap product, or they might not get anything at all. Or what they might end up getting is a lot more ads like this. They will definitely get that because they clicked on it, right? So the algorithm is going to change and they're going to be getting spammed with a bunch of fake ads.
Got it.
Yeah. So I think, as I was saying, post-pandemic, I think we can appreciate some of these factors more so. These were things that this presentation is targeted towards seniors, but I think we all understand now this sense of loneliness and being kind of isolated from our friends and family and our work groups and our normal social connections. And seniors, once they go into retirement, often find themselves in that position. I had the privilege of living with my grandmother and my mother shortly after my father passed away. So my grandfather passed away several years ago, and my mother and my grandmother lived together, and I was living with them, and my husband and I were living with them, and I witnessed the amount of phone calls that my grandmother got being targeted by robocalls. It's incessant. The phone just does not stop ringing. And the same goes with like the Facebook pages. Once my mother changed her Facebook profile to widow, she was getting a ton of these like fake friend requests from fake people trying to scam her, right? And it's a very, very common story. And it's important that we spread the word on that, so that when people are going through these really difficult times in their life, when they are the most vulnerable, they don't fall victim of a scam. So Vanity is a story. If we have some time, I'll share this very quickly. When I was a young attorney, I got an email saying you have been selected as one of 50 the Art of Lawyering Award, because I was a creative young attorney working at a nonprofit doing kind of cutting edge stuff. And I was like, of course I got that. I am a creative attorney. I'm not your traditional attorney. I poked around. Nobody at my work knew what it was about. Somebody on the website was a friend of a friend, a colleague. So I asked that person, do they know what this is about? They had no idea that their picture was being used to promote this fake thing where if I'd sent $50, I would have been listed in something, they were playing on that concept of vanity, right? They find a list of the 4,000 attorneys in North Carolina and their email addresses, say 5 people fall for that. That's an easy $100, right? Depending on what they're asking for. Being afraid, fear is always why people take action, right? People usually are acting out of fear. And so scammers will play on that, and just kind of always being aware when folks are having financial or legal struggles, they are in a spot where they're going to be vulnerable. They're likely to fall for something that's a quick fix. So, and then that last point there, computer problems, being aware that that virus, when it pops up, can be the virus. So making sure you know how to use your computer. Always verifying information, making sure you know who you're talking to when you're talking to them. If it seems like you're going to be rude, like I do this now all the time, say, I'm sorry, I'm going to call you back. And then I find the number from somewhere else and I call the people back who say they're calling me. And people understand, because everybody's getting robocalls. And so anybody that is put off by you questioning whether they're authentic is probably does not have your best interest in mind. Trying to breeze through some of these slides here now. Sign up for the Do Not Call registry. It works. It only applies though to legitimate businesses. It does not apply to scammers or bad actors or people that are criminals. And it also does not apply to political campaigns or nonprofits. So when those calls kind of pop up around election time, that's not a violation of the Do Not Call registry. So do go on there and put your numbers on there. It works. Making sure we're paying in advance if we have to pay in advance, do not pay in advance. You don't have to. If you do have to pay in advance, using a credit card, and for that matter, always using a credit card if you have that too, because it is easy to dispute that. A lot of folks are scared to use their credit card information online, which is also valid. A lot of mobile banking and online banks will now offer one-time credit numbers that you can use per purchase. So instead of putting your credit card number in, you're putting that one-time number, and that's available through some of the banks. This is a graphic on this concept of data mining. People are mining your data based on what you're putting out on your social media. And a lot of folks think that I'm not on social media, so that people don't have information on me. But if you have a gym membership card that you're scanning, or a grocery card that you're scanning, that is being mined. That's data mining. Folks are gathering that information in the background, and they're using it to target ads towards you. Believe it or not, this has been going on for decades, but now with the advent of social media, it just has gotten Pandora's box is opened, and all of our information is out there. So this meme is like, a lot of people think that there's a hacker getting your information, but what it really is you answering those questions to these silly things that pop up. The answers to those questions are often the answers to the password for resetting your password. And so just kind of being a lot more mindful about the information you're putting out online. Internet safety, a main tip for how to protect ourselves is through our apps and on our computers, is setting up two-factor authentication. Is a feature that requires you to put in an email address or a phone number So every time you log in, you'll be notified on the other email or the phone number. It seems quite cumbersome, but it is very important, and it is one of the better ways to protect yourself online. If you are using social media, which we all are, making sure to review their privacy settings and setting them up so that you understand them.
Yeah, Mercedes, we went recently, our Investor 360 went to this multi-factor authentication.
Yes, set it up, do it. Yeah, the setting up the privacy settings as well. And then I think what's very important is talking to people about online behavior. We were talking a little bit before the presentation. You know, my mom watches my 3.5-year-old daughter. We all need to be talking about how technology is being used and when we're using technology. So the example we were talking about was YouTube, and how YouTube can just play video after video after video after video. And if you put that YouTube in front of your grandkid, who knows what's going to pop up after 5 minutes? That algorithm is going to change really quick, and it could be wildly inappropriate. The commercials that pop up. And so going onto these websites and setting it up so that it does not automatically play the next video, especially on things like Netflix, and also knowing that they have, you know, YouTube for kids that limits what content is on there. As our kids become teenagers, it's terrifying stuff, right? There's a group of bipartisan attorney generals in our country that are investigating TikTok because of the effects of mental health on middle schoolers. It is very, very scary, the numbers and behaviors and the loss of life that we're seeing as a result of the mental health effects because of social media. And so we all need to talk about it. We need to observe behavioral changes and just make sure that get kids, while they know how to use the technology better, are not as aware of the dangers of it. And so make it a learning, use it together, have the TV, have the computer, have the devices all together, watch what they want you to watch, right? And then talk about it and talk about what's good about it, what's bad about it. And then if you can, put the device away and take a walk outside, right? This PowerPoint is going to get shared with you. So I'm going to breeze through these really quick, knowing that all of these are available on our website. So I direct you guys to our website and poke around there for a lot of this information. But you know, guarding your information is making sure that you are just not discussing personal information when you don't have to, right? So there's a difference between a secret, a surprise, and privacy, and like knowing that things are private and you don't have to talk about them all the time. Stop using social security numbers and driver's license numbers and things like that as account numbers. And then, you know, having things on your screen to block the view and not working on personal information or private information in public. Protecting your personal information is limiting who has access to your accounts. You know, a family member needs to have access to that, but does your entire family need to have access to it? And the same goes with your physical files as well. When somebody is asking for a piece of information, for example, a social security number, I had somebody ask me for my social security number the other day, and I'm like, is that really necessary? I don't think you need that number to do what you need to do. And they did not, right? It was just kind of, they're just being lazy, right? And so questioning if it's really for a legitimate purpose. Obviously keeping documents with personal information locked in filing cabinets. We talked about the multi-factor authentication, you know, using security measures like firewalls and antivirus software. If you have a tool, you have to know how to use it. So if you have an iMac or an iPhone, going to the Apple Store and taking the classes online or watching the videos on YouTube to learn about how to set up the security settings. Avoid file sharing and using and sharing files when you're on a public network. Often you can go online and you can, instead of using your data, you're connecting through a public Wi-Fi network. Being very reluctant and hesitant when you're using those types of public networks. We talk a lot about online stuff, but let's not forget about our paper mail as well. You know, it's keeping that incoming mail, incoming mailbox locked. And then if you're putting outgoing mail in, putting it in a lockbox, U.S. Postal Service receptacle. You know, I'd be very wary these days of using a fax machine, or especially sending any personal information via mail, email, or fax. And so if you are doing that, you know, making sure that you're using softwares that are encrypted or that the person on the other end is there and they've received it. if it's a fax. Talking a little bit about disposing of personal information, getting rid of records so you don't need any more. You know, a lot of people like just keep things. You don't need to necessarily do that, because the more you keep, the more likely it is to get out there. So having what we call a document retention policy and keeping it as narrow as possible and getting rid of stuff. Shredding things. You can even, and if you have, there's, you know, public shred events that are good to use, making sure you take advantage of those through the State Employee Credit Union. You have hardware or computers, making sure that those things are actually destroyed. You can take hammers to them, you can demagnetize them. I know that you guys have some information about how to do a credit freeze. So we highly encourage you guys to do a credit freeze. It's the best way to protect yourself from identity theft. There's the 3 consumer reporting agencies. You can go by phone, mail, or their website, and they will send you a PIN that you can use to freeze and unfreeze your account. It's the best way to protect yourself. And then if you have been a victim of identity theft, there is this recovery plan that is operated by the Federal Trade Commission, walks you through the steps of how to protect yourself and kind of recover the information that's out there. And I end on this little, you know, joke note that, you know, you have to accept that the computer is a tool, and it's the job of the user to know how to use it. And then don't be a tool, you know, learn how to use your computer. And these are the actual numbers I will leave you on. That second line there, ncdoj.gov/alert sign up, is where you can sign up for our scam alerts. And when we see things that are popping up. And I'm happy to take any questions from the group or
Yeah, this is good. You know, we've said to clients all along that freezing your credit is one of the best and least expensive ways to protect your identity. And it's been very efficient over the years. Most of our clients are in the stage of their life where they don't need new credit. So rarely do they have to go unfreeze it, but it's easy if they do have to unfreeze it. And that's something that I've done personally for my wife and I, is just locked up our credit.
Yeah, no, it is the best way to do it. And I think it's important to note that you can do it not only for yourself, but you can do it for your minor children or anybody that you have, you're the ward of, if you're the guardian of, if you have a ward, you can do it for them as well. And it's important to do it for folks that you might not think need it, like people that are living in long-term care, because they are just as victimized as other folks. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I will say I have my credit frozen as well, and it has prevented me from opening credit as well. I went and, you know, which is a good thing. So it makes you second think those purchases sometimes, because it's that step that you have to take to kind of reopen to finance things. So.
Yeah. And if you're on the call today, we'll send out a follow-up email with this information and the details on how to do this. So just give us some time and you will get that in the next day or so.
And Mercedes, you mentioned the paper, just disposing of paper. We did just have a shred day here at the office.
Thank you so much for hosting that. You guys are covered. I'm talking to your clients there. You guys got covered in good hands there, because those are super crucial events to offer folks. So that's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Anything else, guys? Greg, Tara?
I do have a question. Mercedes, any information on opt-out pre-screen? So it's a website, and I was told about it I think from a federal employee, and I was just wondering if it was something that you would recommend, or if you had heard of. So basically, you receive pre-approved, a lot of people receive these pre-approved credit offers, and potentially getting into the wrong hands and people opening credit, which I know the credit freeze would definitely help with that step. But any feedback on that?
It's not something that I've given too much thought to. You're the first person that posed that question, but I would say, without knowing too much about it, I think the credit freeze is probably your best bet, right? And because I just haven't had the opportunity to research that, so I don't really
Right.
know. Is there a
Okay.
cost associated? I'm curious if there's a cost associated with it. It's great.
No, there's not a cost associated to it. And I know electronically you can go in and enter certain information and it stops those pre-approved credit offers for coming for a
Right.
period of
And,
time.
you know, I think the only concern, I guess my question would be, again, without knowing too much about it, would be
Right.
who's running that? Because you're having to share
Right.
personal information as well in
Additional
order to do that.
information.
So I would be a little bit reluctant,
Sure.
just because it's not one of like the approved credit bureaus.
Okay.
You know, that being said, Experian was the one that breached all of our information, right? So to be fair, it's hard to know sometimes how to best protect ourselves.
True.
And you know, so I get a lot. We often get questions about is the like data breach software or insurance, because now there's a lot of kind of like internet software, data breach, identity theft insurance that's being offered for folks. Is it worth it? Is it a good product, right? And that kind of goes into like it's a risk analysis, right? And so sometimes if it's a large company, then yeah, like a data breach software and data breach insurance might be a smart idea because of the risks of people that you got that are dealing with PII and things of that sort. But for like an individual, maybe not the necessary expense because it's a risk analysis. So
Right.
Yeah, you know, several years ago, LifeLock was a big thing. and,
exactly.
You know, it
Yeah.
was a monthly cost and the price kept going up. So what we ended up erring on was telling clients just to go ahead and freeze your credit.
And that, you know, and that's free, right? And so it kind of begs, it's like it's the risk analysis. How much money are you trying to protect and how much are you going to spend to protect the money, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because they said in their advertising, LifeLock cannot prevent all types of.
And it doesn't,
identity
right?
theft.
Yeah,
But
right.
You can rest assured if you freeze your credit, nobody's going to be able to open new credit in your name.
Right. And then it's a matter, like we were saying, it's like you're either going to, scammers are either going for your hard cash, so you're giving them your money. So don't do that, right?
Mhm.
And then if you can avoid it, obviously it happens, and if it happens, it's because it's not your fault. but then there's the other way where it's people are trying to access that credit, and so if you have that frozen, you're kind of shutting them out, and you're protecting yourself as much as you can. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, Mercedes, we wanted to thank you for your time today and the information you've shared. It is a relevant topic, as we were talking beforehand. Just the four of us have each in some way, shape, or form have experienced some level of fraud or identity theft. And so I'm sure that translates across the folks on the call as well. And so we thank all of you on the call for joining us. And we do hope you found this valuable and you've taken something away from it, whether it's freezing your credit if you haven't already done that, or signing up for the Do Not Call registry, or just doing things like being watchful, hovering over website links before you click on something, or paying attention to from email addresses. I know for me, I didn't realize I could forward along text messages that were spam text messages to report them. So that's something I can take action on personally. But we will be getting just a copy of this video webinar approved and posted to our website, as well as some information out to you guys, as Greg said. So if there are others that you think of that make a benefit from this, that'll be a resource for them as well. And if you have follow-up questions, we'll be happy to, you can reach out to us for those. And if we don't have the answer, we'll reach out to Mercedes and see what we'll get an answer for you. We have done over the last several weeks, we've done a couple of market update webinars. So this is a little bit different, but we try to focus on other ways that we can just be a resource and provide helpful information. So we hope that's been the case today. And we do appreciate your time, each one of you, and hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Anything else, Greg, Tara, Mercedes?
I think that's
I
it.
couldn't have said
Thanks,
it better.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Everybody
you guys
have a
take
good
care.
day.
God bless.
Bye. See ya.
Thanks, Mercedes.
Yes, thank you.